The Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. The truth is not something. The truth is someone. That someone is Jesus Christ. And when you know him, you have the truth, and you walk in the truth, and you joy in the truth, and you rejoice with truth that is unspeakable and unshakable, because Christ is the solid rock.
Hello everybody, welcome to the next instalment of the retrospective look on Jacob's troubles, or latest troubles. Thank you for joining me. I hope we can have a good sort of chat about what we're going to look at today. I will be looking over here. I'll try and put maybe something up on the screen here. But I'm looking at the concept of war crimes within the Middle East, or within what's happening at the moment. I'm sure there would have been plenty of people jump on this channel, or certainly on this video, to sort of get the hooks into it and think, oh yeah, let's see what Israel are doing and how many war crimes they're committing. Where in actual fact, they are really not committing war crimes at all. It would be basically Hamas, the terrorists. Now, the actual law which pertains to armed conflict is called the International Humanitarian Law. Forms a part of the Geneva Convention and so on and so forth, and you can find huge tracts of it from the European Union to the American sort of handbook, right through to the International Red Cross Committee. There are lots and lots and lots and lots of sections that can be found online. I've just looked up one just now. I actually, let you in secret, I pre-recorded this. I was getting the timings wrong with my recording, and and basically I'd my recording finished recording, and I'll start it again and find that I've just been talking and missed like half a chunk of information out there. So I can't find the original piece of information I had, so I've just brought up something new, because you know, it's as plain as the nose on your face on who is committing war crimes. Now, the actual sort of basis behind the international humanitarian law is to protect people from war crimes, or basically protect them from unneeded aggression, try and protect non-belligerent people. So your non-belligerent people are people who are members of the public. They are not included in combat. You also have people living within a belligerent area. So if they're sort of in an area and an army's captured and they're still members of the public, then basically they're protected. If you have a Red Cross or Red Crescent, meaning that you're a medic, you are a protected person. If you're a person of religion, you are supposed to be a protected person. All of these things, notwithstanding, are absolutely included within the international humanitarian law. There's discussions on proportionality. There's discussions on basically making sure that your army looks like an army instead of looking like civilians. All of these things are detailed within the many, many sections within the international humanitarian law. So I'm just going to have a very quick look at what was called the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, Article number 8, which details war crimes. Section that goes like 1, 2, A, B, and so on and so forth. There's, as I said, there's a lot of convoluted sections within this international law statute. So the court shall have jurisdiction in respect to war crimes in particular, and committed as part of the plan or policy, as part of large-scale commission of such crimes. So basically it means a court will have jurisdiction over somebody committing war crimes. For the purpose of this statute, war crimes means, right, A, grave breaches of the Geneva Convention of the 12th of August 1949, namely the following acts against persons or property protected under the provisions of the relevant Geneva Convention. So first of all, you've got 1, willful killing. 2, torture or inhumane treatment, including biological experiments. 3, willful causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. 4, extensive destruction and appropriation of property not justified by military necessity and carried out unlawfully and wantonly. 5. Compelling a prisoner of war or other protected person to serve in the forces of hostile power. 6. Willfully depriving a prisoner of war or other protected person of the rights of fair and regular trial. 7. Unlawful deportation or transfer or unlawful confinement. 8. Taking of hostages. So that's subsection 2A from 1 to 8. Okay. Section B basically says other serious violations of the laws and customs applicable in international armed conflict within an established framework of international law, namely any of the following acts. Number 1, intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population as such or against individual civilians not taking direct part in hostilities. 2, international directing attacks against civilian objects, that is, objects that are which are not military objectives. 3, internationally directing attacks against personnel, installations, material units or vehicles involved in humanitarian assistance or peacekeeping. There's a little bit more to that, but we'll just paraphrase, or else we'll be here all day. Number 4, intentionally launching an attack in the knowledge that such attack will cause incidental loss of life or injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects, or widespread long-term severe damage to natural environment. 5, attacking, bombarding, or by whatever means, towns, villages, dwellings, buildings, which are undefended and which are not military objectives. Number 6, killing or wounding a combatant, having laid down his arms or having no longer means of defence, has surrendered at discretion. 7, making improper use of flags of truce or a flag or a military insignia or a uniform of the enemy or of the United Nations, resulting in death or serious personal injury. 8, transfer, direct or indirect, by occupying power of parts of a civilian population into territory it occupies, or the deportation or transfer of all parts of the population of the occupied territory within or without or outside this territory. 9, intentionally directing attacks against buildings dedicated to religion, education, arts, science, charitable purposes, historical monuments, hospitals, places where the sick and wounded are collected, provided they are not military objectives. 10, subjecting persons who are in the power of an adverse party to physical mutilation or to medical or scientific experiments of any kind which is neither justified by the medical, dental or hospital treatment of the person concerned, and which cause death, serious danger to the health of the person. 11, killing or wounded treacherously individuals belonging to a hostile nation or army. 12, declaring that no quarter will be given, and basically, so it goes on right through to, wow, okay, so we've got 26 sections. I'm going to stop there because it goes on and on and on, because I want to discuss like each part individually, so to speak. So, war crimes under like this definition, which forms a part, as I stated, of the Geneva Convention, sort of forms a part of the international humanitarian law. Basically, it determines who is a belligerent, who is a non-belligerent, who is like a privileged belligerent, a privileged non-belligerent, and so on and so forth. Now, with regards to the international humanitarian law, there was a lot of basic statements about if it's not a military target. Now, buildings such as places of worship or hospitals and so on and so forth do become a fully legitimate target for when a belligerent is using it as cover. It is illegal to use these things intentionally as cover, as dictated to by the international humanitarian law, but the thing is that, if you've got somebody in a hospital wing over there firing a gun at you, just because they're in a hospital wing doesn't mean that you have to stand back and go, oh, okay, they're in a hospital, it's a no-go area, they're nice and safe, they can just still try and kill me, but I can't get them. It doesn't work like that. That by the actions of the belligerent within the protected building makes that building a legitimate target. Now, from the 7th of October attacks that the most of the West have actually completely forgotten about, and the great unwashed left with their pathetic little protests around the world, basically the war crimes which are being committed, and let's make no mistake, in war there's a lot of sort of muddying of the lines of what's good and bad and so on and so forth, and war is a horrible business. It's basically not to tickle each other into submission, it's basically to kill each other in submission. So that's what you get with war. Now, from this statute, from this the definition of Article 8, as you can see straight away, 2A1, which is a grave breach of the Geneva Convention, willful killing. Now, approximately 1,400 members of the public who are protected people under the Geneva Convention were mercilessly murdered. They were raped, they were targeted, they were mutilated. In one case, a baby was cooked alive. You had a woman who had her stomach slit open, and she was a pregnant woman, and her fetus was stabbed through with a knife. You've had people having their eyes gouged out, children beheaded, women beheaded, men beheaded. Men, women, children, babies, it doesn't matter, they were all targeted. Every single one of those, make no mistake, is a war crime by Hamas, and also some Gazan civilians, because as we will discuss later, they are not as innocent as they like to believe. Basically, every single one of those is a war crime. So you're looking at least 1,400. I mean, we give or take a little bit, because some military personnel were targeted, and we don't know whether or not they tried to surrender at that point. So basically, you've got that from the get-go. The next thing is the intentionally directing attacks against population civilization, not taking part in hostilities, directing attacks at civilian objects, and the attacking, bombarding by whatever means of towns, villages, dwellings, and what have you, which are undefended and which are not military objectives. Well, basically, for many years, for the last 16 years at least, the Israelis have had to protect themselves with the Iron Dome. Now, they're not in a state of war against the terrorists of Hamas. Now they are, but they weren't then. And basically, the poor Israelis have had to deal with 2,000 rockets at least per year being fired into Israel. Every single one of those rockets is a war crime, because they are not being directed strategically at military objectives. They are going everywhere and anywhere they can. In fact, one of the latest attacks that Hamas have tried to perpetrate with their rockets, because they're just a bunch of filthy cowards, is basically almost hit the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount within Jerusalem. They fired off a rocket, and lucky for the Muslims in the area, the Iron Dome shot it down before it hit the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is so funny because they call themselves the Al-Aqsa Flood belligerents or whatever, which is hilarious. Now, they've also, not forgetting the fact that Hamas, well, actually no, this is Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They have breached the international humanitarian law, the Geneva Convention, and committed war crime by firing their rockets into Israel and hitting one of their own hospitals. They didn't kill anybody, but they hit the car park area of one of their own hospitals, which is absolutely ridiculous. War crime. The willful killing and torture and inhumane treatment of people, basically full out war crimes. That is what Hamas and the Gazans and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad did. Full pout. Number 8, taking the hostages. Well, 240 people were ripped from their families, or what was remaining of their families, or their dead families, and taken in by Gazan civilians in some cases, and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There's still quite a load of people being held hostage and being treated absolutely disgustingly. A part of the international humanitarian law is that people within hostage situations, or if they are within a hostage situation, they are protected. So every person that Hamas has murdered whilst being a hostage is yet again a further war crime. The refusal of allowing people proper food, that's a war crime, and as we know, they are barely being fed just a bowl of rice. They're also being released back when they were being released under the fake truce that the Gazans and Hamas actually breached themselves. They doped the people with I can't remember the name. Hopefully, I put it there. With a chemical compound to basically make them seem a bit happy. So you've got all these poor people while the filthy jihadi scum are hugging them and waving at them saying bye bye and all that business. They're basically doped, and they're having to smile because they haven't got a clue what they're doing, and also they're being told to smile or else the remaining members of their family will be shot. So all of those war crimes. Willfully depriving a prisoner of war, that's neither here nor there. I mean, at the moment there are a lot of prisoners of war that the Israelis have got. They have, people have been in an outcry because they were videoed with their just in their underwear. Well, tough luck. You're dealing with jihadi terrorists. Who says that they haven't got a belt around an explosive belt around their stomach at any one point in time? Who says that? They're not doing that. Unlawful deportation, transfer, and unlawful confinement. Well, that's the part and parcel of the 240 people that have been ripped from Israel. Again, on so many counts. So on count willful killing, torture, and inhumane treatment, like the poor women that were raped so hard that their pelvises were broken and then shot and continued to be raped afterwards. That's absolutely apocryphal. It's disgusting, and that's what has been seen by the actual video footage. All of this comes from actual video footage. Now you've got a lot of people within the great unwashed left who refuse to believe that it's actually happened. These are the kind of people that you could smack in the face and say, no, it didn't happen because, I just don't believe it happened. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But as I said, we'll discuss that later. So basically from section 2, 1 to 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 and 8 have all been breached on the 7th of October attacks alone by Hamas. All of those multiple amounts of war crimes straight away. Subsection B, intentionally directed attacks against civilized population. Now the thing is that this is a massive part for the very start of the 7th of October attacks, because within that day alone 5,000 rockets had been fired into Israel. Each of those rockets, again, a war crime. And subsequently since then, each rocket that's been fired, whether it's Hezbollah, the Houthis, or Hamas, Islamic Palestinian Jihad, every single one of those that have been fired in is an out-and-out war crime, because they are going for people that have absolutely no way to protect themselves, and apart from the Iron Dome, but they're trying to flood the Iron Dome to get rockets through. Recently, just in the last few days, a poor man was murdered by Hezbollah because an anti-tank missile was fired at a church. How do we know this? One, because of the aftermath of what's happened, and two, because Hezbollah themselves, again, like the scum that they are, decided to release a video on how happy they are because they destroyed a church and a man died because of it. That's, again, a breach of the Geneva Convention. That is, again, a breach of the international humanitarian law. That is, again, a war crime. Now, under subsection B, and if we go straight to 12, section 12, declaring that no quarter will be given. Now, straight away from when Hamas was voted in, they released a manifesto, and we're going to be discussing that in a later video. And one of the main parts of the manifesto basically states that they won't stop until the Israelis are basically dead. War crime. So, subsection B, 16. Pillaging a town or place, even when taken by assault. Well, if the Gazan civilians didn't pillage the living daylights out of the areas where they were, because it's been shown on video, war crimes. Subsection B, 22. Committing rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, as defined as Article 7, Paragraph 2, enforced sterilisation, any form of sexual violence is also constituting a grave breach of the Geneva Conventions. Well, there we go. Absolute proof from the camera footage taken from the terrorists and the civilians as they went straight into Israel and raped girls and women. War crimes. A very, very good one, and we can see this so many times, practically under every mosque, every school, every hospital within Gaza. The terrorists, with their tunnels and everything like that, are breaching subsection 2, 23. Utilising the presence of a civilian or other protected person to render certain points, areas or military forces immune from military operations. So basically, by Hamas using the Gazans as human shields, like children in schools, people praying in mosques, or the sick and ill in hospitals, they are basically using them as a human shield. Each one of those is a war crime. And finally, just for discussion for this, subsection B, section 7, making improper use of a flag of truce, of a flag or a military insignia, uniform of the enemy or of the United Nations, as well as distinctive emblems, Geneva Conventions, resulting in death and so on and so forth. Now, recently there was a case for when it was the three hostages were basically told to go off towards their army. The Israelis unfortunately misinterpreted it and shot them. They just saw three people come along. Unfortunately, one of them had a white flag. Something went drastically wrong there, and it is a real shame. It's a really sad shame. However, there was a report that, if I remember rightly, it was recently in the last week and a half, from the recording of this, which is the 29th of December 23, that the Hamas terrorists actually started using that against Israel, or the Israeli forces. So what did they do? They had a group of people, children, children, with white flags, and they made them, these are Gazans, they made these Gazans walk out towards the Israelis. 5 Israeli soldiers walked up towards these women and children with white flags, and then they were shot and killed, or seriously wounded in one case, or a few cases. But basically, that is the misappropriated use of a flag of truce. War crimes. And as a final note, within the international humanitarian law, and this is actually what really is disgusting. All of it's disgusting, but this is just adds like icing to the cake, to the terror cake. Basically, when you fight in an international or a national law conflict, basically you are expected to look like an army. Now, the Hamas cowards, they've got their little sort of, they've got their masks there, so you can just see their eyes. They've got their "please shoot me quick" green headbands on the best part to get them, and they're all dressed in black. They might wear like a flak jacket, they might wear whatever. They've got their guns, they've got their military boots. They basically look like a relative military for terrorists. but you can determine that that person is not a civilian member, not a protected member. That is a person who is part of the conflict. However, there have been lots and lots and lots of evidence being gathered since practically from the first walk into Gaza, that they're actually getting rid of their sort of uniform, if you can call it one, and they're dressing as civilians. You've got these Hamas terrorists running around wearing their Western clothing, like their Adidas tracksuit bottoms and so on and so forth, looking like civilians. Now this forms two parts. The wearing of civilian clothing makes it very difficult for the IDF to find out who's who in the zoo, because they're going to see somebody running along, some bloke running along and wearing his Adidas tracksuit bottoms and the rest of his Western clothing, and they're going to think, well, is he a civilian or not? Oh look, he's got an RPG, he's a belligerent, he's a terrorist, we have to try and arrest him, if not we have to try and kill him. Similar to that. Every terrorist, because they are still supposed to be part of a military unit and in a military conflict, they are breaching international humanitarian law. They're committing war crimes by being indistinguishable from military to civilians. Now what happens basically when they die? Well, then the Palestinian Authority, under the control of Hamas, start jumping up and down saying, oh, we've just had 200 civilians killed there. They know full well that they are Hamas terrorists, but they look like civilians. Oh, look at those poor people. Oh, let's start banging our heads like a bunch of idiots. Let's give it to the United Nothing to hook, line and sinker them. This is how many people have been murdered by the Israelis, when they know full well that they are terrorists, belligerents, and the IDF know full well that they're terrorist belligerents. If you think about the war crimes aspect of this, the IDF are seriously hamstrung by prophetic implications, what's happening prophecy-wise. The international community are keeping such close scrutiny that they're believing anything that the terrorists tell them. Oh, look at what the Jews have done. Look at what the Israelis have done. It's disgusting. They're murdering thousands of people. It's, besides the fact that Muslims are murdering thousands of Christians, and that happened within the last week in Africa. Thousands of people were slaughtered by Muslim militias because they were Christian. Yeah, again, we'll discuss in a later video, but it's funny how you don't see anybody, ranting and raving and trying to form groups against genocide for that. Where the actual fact is that Israel, as I said, are under so much scrutiny, it's unbelievable. If they ever step 1 foot out of place, they've got the Americans to deal with, they've got the United Nothing to deal with, they've got the European Union to deal with, they've got the other Arab or Muslim countries to deal with. They've got absolutely everybody to deal with. The thing is that they are fighting a war, and they are one of the most humanitarian, if you can have such an oxymoron, they are one of the most humanitarian armies going. They had every right to flatten those first few hospitals that they went into. They could have given the direction, as they have been, they've been telling the Gazans where to go. You've got to leave because we've got to go and destroy. There's a terror cell there, and there's a terror cell there. Terror cell using your school there, using your house there. That we know for a fact that there are weapons held at that house there. The thing is that the Israelis are saying, look, leave now. Leave now, get out. They're doing leaflet drops, they're sending messages through social media where they can. They're just saying, get out, to the civilians. Now, the thing is that from eyewitness interrogations, from interrogations of hospital personnel that have been captured by the IDF, even doctors and nurses are members of Hamas, working in hospitals. War crimes, again, they are committing war crimes. They are basically allowing Hamas, because they are part of Hamas, to control the hospital, to use it as a human shield. And therefore, every place that Hamas are, and they are like a virus, they are practically everywhere throughout Gaza, it is disgusting. They are using so many things to try and use it as their advantage. Hospitals, mosques, schools, you name it. They're trying to use them. Now, each one of those, as dictated to by the humanitarian law, the international humanitarian law, each one of those becomes a legitimate military target to the IDF. Are the IDF doing what they are legally entitled to? Flattening the living daylights out of the hospitals and such? No, they're not. They're going for houses. They know that a terrorist lived at house, 21 whatever down such road. They're basically, going along and they're flattening those houses because they know that that was a terrorist house. So of course they're not going to try and keep it. They will actually try and, do whatever they need to do, but it depends if there are any terrorists in there. Quite often there are. But with the hospitals, what are the Israelis doing? Are they flattening them? No, they're actually bringing equipment in to help the sick. It's disgusting on how many of the great unwashed left idiots that protest around the world about war crimes and Israel committing war crimes. It's just so funny how wrong you really are. They are not committing war crimes. You have got 10, maybe 20, even if not 30,000 war crimes by now, just from the 7th of October, committed by the filth of Hamas and also by quite a few Gazan civilians. Basically, any war crimes that have been committed are intentionally being committed by Hamas, not the Israelis. The Israelis are trying to do the right thing. Anyway, so I hope that some people have learned something about this discussion. I hope it's been able to reaffirm other people's sort of viewpoint on this. Basically, we really do live within prophetic times. We really do live in the case that good is called evil and evil is called good. It is absolutely huge at the moment. As I said, we'll discuss that on the other side of the channel. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll catch you later. Have a good day.